I'm Greg Cope-White, and don't worry, no one's listening. I like all the things like thinking is writing, reading is writing. And it is true, but it's really,
true.
You need to put not in front of that. Thinking is not writing, reading is not writing.
Don't worry, no one's listening.
Hey, everybody, I'm screenwriter and novelist Edward Savio. Welcome to the podcast. I don't know if you've had this experience, but when I was in school, I began to realize that about 50% of what my teachers and then professors were telling me was bullshit. I just didn't know which 50% it was. After school, even after I sold screenplays to major studios, I'd go back every few years and take a class, creative writing, directing, editing, whatever it was, to challenge me. After being out in the world and in the industry, sitting in those classes, I knew which half was bullshit and which half I needed to listen to. The things my guests and I talk about, this is the 50% that isn't bullshit. So even when I tell you not to, even when a guest says,
"Would you mind fucking off?"
keep eavesdropping. Today I'm talking with Greg Cope-White. Greg served 6 years in the Marines, earning the rank of sergeant before deciding he hadn't had enough punishment and moved to New York to study acting and writing. Eventually, like many aspiring writers, including myself, Greg made his way to Los Angeles. There, he got his first big break working for the legendary Norman Lear. Greg went on to become a TV writer, screenwriter, producer, and author of The Pink Marine, his hilarious memoir about joining the Marines, where he learned not only how to survive the rigors and absurdity of military life, but also gained the strength to show the world his true self. The Pink Marine's been adapted into the new Netflix series Boots, streaming now. I binged it. It's funny and powerful, and the characters are so great. So are the reviews. So check it out, but not before you hear my conversation with Greg Cope-White.
Don't worry, no one's listening.
Greg, thanks for joining me. And remember, we've left everybody else behind.
This is just between us, right?
Yes,
Between you and me.
this
No
is
one's
just between us. I mean, no one's listening. It's just us. So one of the things that I love about getting to talk to people like you is that there's not a group of people that sit around and talk about writing at a certain level. We don't get to share our experiences, and it's been fascinating to me over the years. It started way back when I was talking to Lowell Gantz and Babalu Mandel. I would ask them advice because I wrote by myself and I wrote as a writing team for a brief period, and I didn't know how to do it. So this is always a fascinating thing. And I know the first question, most people are like, what inspired you to write The Pink Marine? But I think it's what the fuck inspired you to go and do the boot camp that led to this?
If I were prescient, I'd say I was after a good story. But it really was just a total fluke, which you're reading how it was in the book. You'll see that in the show. I picked up on a word that you said about writing advice. No one needs any writing advice. People need a kick in the butt to go write.
That's right.
But, there's absolutely nothing that I can tell you or advise you about writing except get your ass up and go write. So
Sure.
finish listening to this and then go write.
It's true, because I think my job, 80% of it is finding new ways to procrastinate. You know what I mean? I think it's developing. I think I'm really a developer of procrastination skills is really what I am.
I like all the things like thinking is writing, reading is writing. And it is true, but it's really,
true.
You need to put not in front of that. Thinking is not writing, reading is not writing. But it's hard because you asked why I did it. And honestly, it was because I was looking for something. I grew up at a time when, well, first off, when out wasn't in and there was no support for anything. Look, we didn't have any gay icons yet in the 70s when I was a little kid. We were pretty sure that Elton John was gay, but he hadn't confirmed it yet. We saw all that and we thought maybe. And then there weren't any books or literature that were really in the zeitgeist. So, I was a little kid combing the stacks of libraries, just looking for books, a story, a nugget, just anything that told me that what I was feeling inside was okay. And I never found that. And then I luckily had this amazing best friend. I, as you know from the book, I went to 13 schools in 11 years. I went to 3 schools in the 10th grade alone. So I was completely untethered. But in the 9th grade, where I got to go to a school for a whole year, I met my best friend. And warm your heart to know, since you're reading the story in the book about our friendship, we're still best friends. 50 years later, we just celebrated our 50th friend anniversary, and we got to celebrate it on the set of the adaptation of my book. He came to set with me for summer production, so that was really fun to have him there and to witness it. It was also great for the 400 people that were on the crew to see that the friendship that they'd read about in the book and then they were illustrating in the show was still intact. He's a surgeon here in LA. He's great. But I bring that up because what we always have, whether it's in the media that you're seeing yourself represented or whatever, is allyship. And I didn't know yet to search for allyship. And now I've learned how important it is for me to be an ally. I'm more of a writing ally than I am anything else. But the fact was I didn't know what else to do with my life. I was completely untethered. I had no home. I had no organization that I belonged to. And I was told by society that I didn't belong here, that I didn't fit in, that there was no place for me. The origin story is really just my friend telling me that he was going to go into the Marines and he was going to spend his summer in boot camp. And it was at a place called Paris Island. And he'd be back in time for his college sophomore year to start in September. And I thought, I love summer camp and I love boots.
Right.
And so I told him,
I heard boots in camp. That was it. And summer. That was it.
You think you're going to improve your archery skills or learn how to canoe finally, but it's not any of that, as you know. And I told him, I said, I'll go with you. And he argued. He was the best naysayer. He's like, they're going to eat you alive. You don't know what you're doing. It's the Marine Corps. And I was raised by a single mom, so I had never watched war movies or played war. And I certainly didn't know yet that the Marines had that special cachet. But, the gays do like an upgrade. So it kind of made sense that I picked the Marine Corps.
You speak about something really interesting about not having icons. I think as a kid, I remember there were a couple people that later on in life, they came out of the closet. The things that we even thought of at the time, like Liberace was pretty obvious, were not what you would be as a person normally. Regardless of whether Liberace was straight or not, that's not a normal gay person. That's not a normal straight person. That's just someone who's so big.
I'm so glad that you added that because I didn't see my place in society at all. And if that was the way that gays were, I didn't see myself.
That wasn't you, right?
It wasn't it. I can't pull that off. I would love to, but I just don't have that. And for people like Liberace and Elton John to want to portray themselves so publicly, I still didn't see myself there. I wanted to know what else there was for me, and I really wanted to study and learn about if I feel like a man and I have all the man parts, what is being a man? Now,
right.
I don't know that the Marine Corps was the best place to learn it. But you know what?
Hey,
it was a good place to learn it. I saw everything.
Yeah, you didn't do it for just a couple of years. You did it for 6 years. That's more than just your basic commitment, right?
Who knew I was good at it?
Yeah. I want to get back to that again, but I do want to stay on this subject of even in the early years of being in Los Angeles, in the 80s, the entertainment industry is about as alphabet friendly as any community. There's a lot of creative people who do not fit into a box. Even then, it was still a place where people had trouble being who they are. Let's first start with the shock of boot camp.
It is a shock. I'm sitting here and telling my friend that I can do it and I want to do it. And then, as you know from the book, I had to go through a lot of stuff.
They said no to you. They said no.
They said no a lot. And I finally just lied and cheated and got my way in. But it's interesting that you bring that up because I didn't know what I was asking for. You know, that old thing, be careful what you ask for. So I kept fighting and saying, I can do it, I can do it. And I kept clearing hurdles. And yes, I was lying. And yes, I was cheating. Well, the recruiter was cheating, but I went along with it. And I'm thinking, oh, this is great. And I remember an hour before we were leaving for the airport, they brought me into this office and they played a videotape. Maybe they'd realized that I didn't quite know what I was getting into. And on that videotape first I saw guys getting their heads shaved. Then I saw them climbing cargo nets and in mud and carrying rifles. And I looked around, there was nobody else in the room. Like, wait, is this what I'm signing up for? Because I didn't know anything about this. And so sure enough, about 8 hours later, I'm standing in the middle of a road in the middle of the night at Parris Island, South Carolina, with my head shaved, dressed head to toe in camouflage and holding an M16. And I'm thinking, how did I get here? Well, I asked for it. And I had to make the best of it. It was crazy. It was so shocking. I'd never been in any kind of a group situation like that because I didn't play team sports. I'd never been in a shower. That was illuminating.
Yep, sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
a group shower. And
Yep.
I'd never been told, I had a very lax mom. I was emancipated at the age of 14. So I was used to doing what I wanted to do. So for somebody to tell me when to wake up, when to go to bed, what to eat, how much to eat, and all of that was probably something that I needed, but definitely not something that I'd ever prepared myself for. It's you have to remember that the one thing that I never thought about when I was demanding that I get in was what the main purpose is. They have 13 weeks to teach you that it's okay, and not only okay, but required for you to kill on command without thinking, for you to unbend the lifelong belief that murder is bad to murder is okay if we tell you. It isn't in the fine print anywhere, but we are there to learn to commit murder.
I've shot guns since I was a little kid. It's super powerful. The first time you take that weapon in your hand, do you remember the first time?
Absolutely. We don't fire for about 5 weeks. So we learn everything about the rifle. We learn how to disassemble it. We learn how to clean it. We learn all of its properties, how far it can shoot, how many rounds per minute it shoots. I think in the book, I say I spent a month with this bitch before she put out. And, it's a somber thing when you finally do go to fire it. First off, there's live ammunition. And so you can imagine the precaution that is being taken, the precautions that are being taken on, I almost said on the set, on the that too, but on the firing range, because there are live weapons and we've never shot these things before. I had a bigger concern in that I'd only fired a gun one time before, and that's in the book, a really funny story about hunting with my best friend, with Dale. And that was my only shooting experience. So I was more concerned with, just like I was with every aspect of boot camp, not being able to do it. I already knew that I was different. I already felt other. They're yelling faggot 50 times a day. It's different when you are one. You're
Right,
just thinking,
right.
wait, did you call my name?
Right.
So I felt every barb and every sting, and I didn't want to add to that pile and have somebody say, oh, you're a lousy shot, you can't run, your boots look like shit. What are you here for? And so I was really, really trying to pay attention in class and learn and listen to what the instructors were saying, because I wanted to do a good job.
That's great. All right, Greg, we're going to take a quick break here, and we'll be back in just a minute.
We've got more to come, including Laugh, Cry, Scream. You don't know what this is yet unless you've been here before, but you aren't listening, are you? I want to give a big shout out to Bookster, home to a huge community of readers, for partnering with us so we can go deep with these writers. They said yes so you can eavesdrop on our conversations. Readers, there's a lot of excellent content, recommendations, and Q&As with authors. Writers, Bookster helps you reach new readers. Whether you're a reader or a writer, check out Bookster, no E.com. And now, even though you're not supposed to be listening. Back to the show.
Don't worry, no one's listening.
All right, everybody, welcome back. One of the things we were talking about before we even got on was about the writing process. And I know you said no advice, right? But
Still, we share our journey.
we share our journeys, right?
That's advice. I just don't want to tell someone to write this way, but yes,
Exactly.
I'm happy to talk about how I found it, because I think it is interesting, considering that there's not, whether you're in the long form narrative business or screenplay business or any aspect of filmmaking, there's not a college degree required for that.
No, and as a matter of fact, it's one of those things where sometimes it can harm your product to a certain extent.
Especially if you go to film school and you have a teacher that has never really made a film, but they know what they're talking about on paper, and
Yeah.
they get you locked into these certain ways that should, and they're not right. There's 1,000 different ways to accomplish every single thing.
Yeah, I went to school and I had a teacher, very smart, knew what she was doing in a certain area, but it was mostly like PBS and documentary. And she told me how to write. And I knew from reading, even back then I got my hands on scripts, I knew that this was not it. I got a D in my script writing class because I didn't do it the way a television producer would want me to do it. I did it the way it was for the big screen. So what we were talking about before we came out here was about the fact that we both started in the visual medium first, in writing for, you with television and screenplays, and me with screenplays first. And then we went on to write novels. And the process is so different. For people who have read my novels, they want me to write more. And one of the bad things is that I do so much research where sometimes I will have, and this is not a joke, studied every single way the pyramids were built, or possible way, so it can be as accurate as possible. But when you're writing a screenplay, you're not the last word. So you don't need to be so authoritative. There's going to be a guy who's going to know how to work the guns. But when you're writing, and when I'm writing in a novel, or even when you're telling your story, you have to be as accurate as possible.
I mentioned earlier that you don't need a degree or a college education to be in any kind of a job in this business. I worried about that. That was a big problem for me because I didn't know how to write. I get out of the military. I know I want to tell stories. I've been telling stories my whole life, but I didn't know how or what it looked like. So when I moved to Los Angeles, I happened to move when a writer's strike hit, and I was already acting. So I had some scripts from auditions, and I had acted in New York, and I'd written a little bit in New York. And then I moved to LA, and a strike hit, and I had no auditions, no meetings, no phone calls, as you know, when a writer's strike is on. But I had this stack of scripts. So I, like you did, I just opened up these scripts and started looking at them analytically. So I studied the 3-act structure in half-hour sitcoms. That was most of my experience. And I just started writing, and I figured it out pretty quickly, but I'm saying pretty quickly, like 2 years. And I would hone and craft and get people to read it. The same happened when I went to write the book, which we'll get to. At first I was discouraged by my lack of an education because I thought I had a handicap. But then I learned to be encouraged by what I learned as I was going on. So forget that you don't have any training, forget that you don't know what you're doing, just figure it out and do it. That's kind of how I treated my life in the Marine Corps as well. Oh, this is a rifle? Okay, let's figure out how to shoot it. Oh, follow the rules. So the time that I spent kind of learning how to write and then is great, but you need to have somewhere to go with it. And I didn't have any connections. I didn't have a lot of people. And I, really boring story, but I got a job at a temp agency, and
that's what I did,
just to pay the bill. And I just happened to get a job at Citibank, and Norman Lear had just bought a chain of movie theaters. In order to buy that, he took out a loan from Citibank, and he hired one of the bankers away. And that banker, Scott Richland, thank you, Scott, said as he's leaving, came to me and he said, I know you want to be a writer. If I hear of anything at the studio, I will let you know. And I thought, yeah. And about a year later, the great Lisa Lindo gave her resignation to Norman, and there was a job open. And Scott Richland really did recommend me. And I went in and fought really hard for that job and got it. And, that was wild. I was told not to show Norman a script for a year to pay my dues. And I thought, I'm not about to show him a script. I don't know what I'm doing. He'd think my scripts are shit. And I agreed to that. And then the next day, Norman came up to my desk to introduce himself with these words: I hear you're a writer. Have something on my desk tomorrow. And I thought, okay. So just like you found working with a partner was beneficial, I knew that this was a shot, and I knew it was the best shot I was ever going to have in life. So there was another guy that had just started working for Norman as well, who had been to film school. And I had lunch with him and said, hey, I have to have a script to Norman tomorrow. I have a pretty good, solid spec. Would you like to go in on it together and make it better? We'll put both of our names on it and see what he thinks. Sean Dwyer, the amazing Sean Dwyer, we still write together. We wrote both of those movies for Netflix together. And I turned in the script to Norman, and he loved it. And that led to, 30 years of support and phone calls on my behalf. And, you mentioned about this being a town where everybody kind of gets to be themselves and explore other things. That's not always the case. I don't know that I specifically lost jobs because I've always led as my authentic self. The ironic thing about this, I've been out since I was in the Marine Corps. I came out while I was in the Marines. I had to stay straight when I was on base and in uniform. But in my personal life, I was already out because the Marines gave me the confidence to do that.
That's crazy.
But it was still illegal if they found out. So I had to lock it up on base, and then I was just wilder and whatever out in public. I don't know that I lost jobs because I led with my authentic self. Maybe I did. I was up for a job at Seinfeld and I didn't get that. And there's a pretty good chance that good old boys room was not, at the time I thought, and now I know most of the guys, they would be hot.
Let's be clear. There is prejudice in Hollywood still.
And no is the easiest word to utter in Hollywood. It's quick and it's fast and it shuts the door. And
nobody ever got fired for saying no.
The one thing you can't do, you can't let others dictate what you write. You always, and this is not writing advice, but just what works for me, is you have to write the story that you want to tell. You can't write for the market. You can't think, oh, horror movies are doing well, let me attempt a horror movie.
Nope.
The reason that my book is a book and wasn't a screenplay first is because there wasn't a market for this kind of a story in the early 90s when I first thought about writing it. So I thought about writing it as a screenplay. Norman was very encouraging about that. Norman was a veteran and he loved the stories. He called me Sergeant. And the idea of trying to craft that story and find a market for it, I knew the reality. So I really put it aside for a while. And then you asked, if there was a specific reason why I wrote the book. There was. This starts off, I write this as an author's note in the book. What really motivated me to write the story was I saw teenagers, young people deciding to end their lives over being bullied rather than just hold on for one more day and raise their own priority level. And I thought, I've got this great story about tolerating indifference and fighting through people's prejudices. And if I don't tell that story, maybe another kid won't hang on. So if anything, I really wanted to address that trend and talk about the fact that there are ways to keep going.
Yeah. Craig, I got to ask you, you were saying that you came out, but you had to lock it down.
Lock it up.
Lock it up on base. Yeah, it's true. Lock it up on base. Besides your best friend, do you think people knew?
I think probably deep down, the problem was it was at a time when you just couldn't trust anybody. And the reason that I didn't continue in the Corps, after enlisted boot camp and about a year in service, I was recruited to go to officer candidate school, which is just boot camp all over again.
Yep.
And I decided to do it. because I thought, you know what? I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to go to law school. I'll practice law for the Marines, the judge advocate group, and then I'll have a great resume because I'll have 5 years of military service and legal service there, and it'll help me get other jobs because there's way too many lawyers to get us all jobs. And then the more I thought about it, it was time to go to law school, and it was also time to re-enlist. My 6 years was coming to an end. And I thought, you know what? I can't do it. I know these guys so well, but they don't know me.
Yeah.
And they might hate me for not telling them. They might hate me for keeping it from them, and they might hate me for just being who I am. And I thought, I can't lie to these wonderful guys another minute. And I can't make up stories about what I did on the weekend, change the pronouns, try to come up with something. I guess that's our first experience as writers. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't be insincere and inauthentic anymore. The guys were too good. They didn't deserve that. And so I stepped away, and I cherish my time more than any other time in my life. And I'm thrilled that I got to tell the story in the book. And I'm thrilled that it got the attention of producers that wanted to, televise it, to dramatize the whole thing.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I mean, there's a couple of things I want to get to with this. You started in television, right? So you can kind of see how this can go that way. But how did that come about? The book was released what year?
2016. We started developing it immediately. I worked at Norman's office at the same time this other producer did, Rachel Davidson. But we became close. She would hear Norman calling me Sergeant. And she's like, what's that about? It's like calling a big guy tiny. And he's like, no, he's actually a sergeant in the USMC. So she's like, well, I got to hear that story. So as I was writing the book, she was encouraging me and wanting it. And then she optioned it right out of the gate. And so we actually started developing it in 2018. And I toured in 2016 with the book and then developed it. So it was, I didn't create IP for the purpose of creating IP. I really always intended to, once I decided to do it, to write a book, to have it as a book. If a TV show happened, great. That of course is kind of a goal, but the goal was to get the story up. And having a book is fabulous. It's better to say I've written a book than I'm writing a book. I learned that real quick.
Oh yeah.
You're writing a book. But the time that I spent transitioning from screenplays to long form writing was kind of fun because I didn't know what I was doing. And I absolutely was terrified because like we said, I don't have that education. I didn't know how to write long form. And I have this wonderfully supportive boyfriend, the best boyfriend in the world. I know you guys all think you got a good one. You don't. And he is not a writer, but he's very good, very creative, and he loved my stories. And so as I got ready to write and I was buckling down, he created a spreadsheet. And because he's a businessman, and in I still have it. It was marvelous. It had when a chapter was going to be finished, when the next chapter, how long it took to edit it, all these little steps. And I love that. But as we know, that's just not how it works. We write when we have exhausted every other excuse not to write.
Yes.
And but the main reason that I wasn't just jumping towards the keyboard was because I didn't know how to write long form narrative. So he showed me my phone, pulled up my camera and said, you've got 80 pictures of pie on your phone that you've taken. Write me a short story about pie. So I wrote a story about pie, about trifle actually. And it was really funny. Because I'd been a sitcom writer for 10 years.
Yeah.
So or longer. And he said, okay, now write me another one. So when I had about 3 little stories written and I loved how they sounded and I was using my voice, you don't have to find your voice. You just have to use your voice.
That's right.
Have your voice. You don't have to find your voice. Just use it. Talk like you talk to your best friend. Talk like you sing in the shower. Whatever that is, your voice is there. Just mine it. So again, that's not writing advice. But he built a blog. He took those stories and he built a blog. And I started contributing to that blog. People started reading the blog. And it was nice to have feedback. But, you never learn anything from praise. So I wasn't looking for praise. I was looking for muscle building. So I kept going. And before I knew it, after about maybe 6 months, Huffington Post found the blog, and they decided to run the blog on their site and have me contribute and write other things. So I was being rewarded for something that I didn't know that I knew how to do. But I was having such a blast writing these stories. And there were a lot of stories about the Marines, a lot of stories about food. That blog led to hosting a show for Food Network. It led me to competing on a Mark Burnett reality cooking show. All of those things, I only did those. I was writing the book to build my author platform. So that was, you have to, as you know, you're a screenwriter, you call your agent in Hollywood and say, hey, I'm writing a book. They're like, what's a book?
Oh my God. That was nobody cared. Nobody cared.
So,
and it ended up being my biggest sale because nobody cared at the time.
Did you sell your book did you adapt your own book to a screenplay?
Yeah, yes. And that was the thing. It was funny because one of my favorite negotiation points in the contract was when they wanted the novelization right to my novel. And I was like, no, you can't, I'm going to do the screenwriting. And it was Wendy Feinerman, who was huge. She was legend, Academy Award winning producer. And it was an exciting experience. One of the things that I don't know you personally, but I'm going to say, I think you are like this as well, where
it's okay to say it. Nobody's listening.
Yeah. Where, we have to balance the serious with humor or the humor with serious. How do you take that emotional topic that you were going through? I just wrote a book. I write sci-fi and adult mainstream fiction. When I write the adult mainstream fiction, it's much more my story through the eyes of these characters. And I had to put myself out there and say things that, like, I thought my parents would never speak to me or my family, just about how I saw the world. And that's as a straight male, right? Saying stuff that's about relationships. That's not even going that extra step. But for you, you said you started in the 90s thinking about writing this.
I did take a stab at writing it before I really wrote it. I knew that I wanted to write it. I didn't know exactly how I was going to tell the story. So I wrote it, and I wrote about 28 pages. And I gave him to that boyfriend, early days. And he read it, and he's like, but you're making stuff up. You're exaggerating stuff when the story is actually enough and real. That's not thinking they were enough. That's when you're other, you don't think you're enough. You think, oh,
that's right.
Nobody needs to hear all this. So I've never looked at those pages. I actually don't know where they are, but I put them aside and I thought, he is totally right. I have to just speak the truth. And, you mentioned earlier that we have a slug line to establish the mood of a group or a setting or whatever in a screenplay. But you get to a book, and I wrote the book I tried cinematically. And part of that is painting a picture. And you talked about humor. And also I understood that I was illustrating a world that 99% of the reader is not familiar with. Very few people have been to Marine Corps boot camp, but it's super specific. It's super visual. You will remember every moment of it rest of your life. Not just me. People say, how did you remember this book and write everything down in such detail, so many years later? And I'm like, everybody that went through it could do exactly that. You remember you remember the smells, the sounds, every impression. When you asked me what it felt like to fire a weapon for the first time, I am in touch with that. But the main thing was just trying to use humor, like you said, to entertain the reader. So I walk you in, I describe the barracks, I describe the guys or whatever, but then I inject with my own fears and insecurities, and that's the humor. It comes from that.
That's great. We're going to take one more quick break, and we're going to come back. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the process of seeing your words. And this isn't the first time, but this is more probably the first time you've seen your real life up on screen. So we'll be right back.
Hey, everybody, we're taking a break. But I want to just mention one thing. If you're like me, you don't always have time to sit with a book. What I do is stack formats. You read at night, you listen in the car. You get to finish more books. And like I said, reading has made me a happier, healthier person. So if you've been meaning to read more, grab an ebook, add the audio, bounce between them. Drop me a line on what you're pairing, at Edward Savio. I hear Lisa calling, even though you can't. So let's get back to more with Greg Cope White.
All right, we are back. And Greg, I want to ask you something before we get into the whole thing about the process of the book becoming a Netflix series. The thing that Lisa first sold that was big as my agent was a thing called Swiss Family Rubenstein. It's like Bette Midler and Michael Douglas from New York, and basically he's caught embezzling and they were on vacation and they needed to leave and then they crash.
That sells in the room.
It's a 3-word pitch. I mean, it's a 3-word pitch, right? And Bette Midler's company bought it with Disney. And one of the things that Disney did afterwards is they changed the name to Stranded, which is why the movie doesn't exist. Because if they had kept the name Swiss Family Rubenstein, I think it would have been perfect. They changed the name of this.
Right. We don't have a title yet.
I love the book cover. It's one of my favorite covers.
My boyfriend designed that. I keep talking about this guy like he's a myth, but he made that cover. I do want to speak about that title change, if I may.
Oh,
Look,
yeah, let's go do that.
It's a great title. There's no question. And I never anticipated a show being called something else. However, in the streaming world, a second season goes by how many views you got, not by how many positive reviews you got. It's views. So Netflix explained to me that they need to have multiple points of entry, and you don't want to scare a viewer away. And
True.
If somebody thinks that they're going to be watching a gay show, I'm the only gay character in it. There's just like the book, everybody else in there is straight, maybe. And so, I don't want to do anything that scares away one viewer. So in order for this project to succeed, I have to let go of my ego and understand the book is the book, the show is the show, and there's nothing that'll ever change any aspect of the title to me or the meaning of that or the story.
Yep.
But I want something that is more representative of the ensemble that we present in the show.
That's a really great way. I feel the same way about, again, I did start as a screenwriter first, so I don't have some of the crazy anger that some novelists can find.
But you're not wrong in that Stranded has no bite and Swiss Family Rubenstein has all the bite. Bite. When they tell you they're going to change the name, you do hope that they're going to find something with bite. The gravitas is fine too, but just something that's as good as the original title.
Agreed. And that's important. You said something and you put it in almost exactly the same words that I put it, which is, I have my book. Whatever happens, my contracts mean I'm usually involved at some point in the development. But how far that goes is is the people who are paying. Yeah.
I'm a writer on the show, but I'm not the showrunner. So I still have a boss who's in charge of my life.
Right. That's so great. You're like, God damn it, I'm fucking back in the core.
Because Norman Lear is an executive producer and, wrote the foreword to the book and was so integral in the development of the show and the filming of the first episodes, I met with extra respect. I think people understand that if it's a project that Norman wanted to take on, it's obviously got some good element to it. And so I love that they've embraced all the good.
So let's just stay on this for a minute. How was that experience seeing the words of your life, and even if it's dramatized, it's again, like you said, the same thing happened to me, where the more truthful I was, even if it was a veneer of another character's name over me, or a face in your case here on the screen, the more faithful it was to the truth, the funnier and better it was. I didn't need to go that much beyond the truth to reveal the truth. How did that feel to relive that in a more external way as opposed to the writing process?
I like to pull all the way back and look at this from the outside. What are the chances that an uneducated kid from Lubbock, Texas is going to grab a pen, figure out how to write a book that is incredibly well received? I can't believe any of it. And then much less sell that to a network and have them buy a show and hire actors and 400 crew members and shoot an entire show. When I was on set, pulling back, and I would be in the parking lot walking towards set, seeing, hundreds of people and dozens of trucks and buildings, and think, this is all from just picking up a pen and writing a story. I am amazed and gobsmacked at all of that. It took a lot of work. It was hard. I'm not about to forget everything that happened that made it rough, but I am here to celebrate the accomplishment as a writer, knowing dozens of writers in town that not only deserve to have their work shown and told, that aren't going to have it happen. It's amazing. It's catching lightning in a thimble. So I'm never going to be ungrateful for that. I'm always going to celebrate that. And because I write the show as well, the way I describe it, Publishers Weekly had me write, Writer's Digest had me write an article for them a couple months ago, and I put it, I'm going to paraphrase it, but it's something like, I had a dual responsibility as the person who had the show and the person that's now one of the writers on the show. So I had to not only lay over my original story with my body to protect it,
Yeah.
I also had to sometimes get up and light the fuse to the bomb that's going to blow up that story and change it a bit or make it something else. So I was ready to, I had to learn how to do that, but I was ready to do that because I really am after the best story possible. And if I have really talented executives at Netflix and Sony and these amazing showrunners, if I have them saying, we need to do it this way, I'm on board with that. And it's my job as a writer and a writer on a television show to make the showrunner's vision come true, not my vision. They're very respectful of my story, and I appreciate that. I couldn't believe being on set that every day a cameraman would come up with this copy of the book and want to go over a section or have me just sign it. I couldn't believe that these crew really were interested in the story that they were telling. So that was all that. All that is to say, I have a responsibility to tell my story the best way I can in whatever medium that is.
One of the things I really liked hearing about that was, same thing, small town, did not get a degree in screenwriting. What's interesting is even people who have made money, I've made a lot of money as a writer, do not have the experience yet. Like it is lightning in a bottle of actually getting stuff made. Like you can still make money, have a career, write, and work with all these great people and develop things and still not get to the point where the trucks are driving and the honey wagons are on set. It is rare to see that introduction in the book, to hear the you that you were introducing, and then to see you here now. That's a big journey.
My last moment on set was with I had to run to the airport. We were wrapping that day, and I wasn't going to see the last shot, but it was just coverage. And we're having a big meal in the tent. We filmed in New Orleans. There's a live jazz band playing. In a tent, there's ice sculptures and shrimp in the name of
Crazy.
It's crazy. We're just having a great time. We're eating amazing food. It's having all this great camaraderie as you have on the set, which if you haven't experienced camaraderie on a set, join the military. You'll experience it in the military, and then you'll carry that through when you sell your story to a show. But the AD, Scotty, grabbed me as I was leaving. It's very emotional. I mean, I'm just a sobbing mess so often when these things are happening. And I'm trying to get out of there, and she grabs me and she says, take a minute and look around. All of this is because you took pen to paper. And, I felt it, and I felt really good about it and emotional about it. And I said to her, I want every single person in this room to feel this. So I want you to feel it. I want you to, so I encourage people to write their stories, whether you're gay, straight, blue, country, city, whatever that is, you've got a story. And so I really do encourage people to write it because it can happen.
I think everybody has at least one horrible story in them. And if they can get past that, they might even have a great story inside.
You're saying earlier, we have this responsibility to write. We have this responsibility to write well. Had I not really, really worked my ass off in crafting the book into a story that was attractive to producers, it wouldn't have happened. So, I had to make that the best that I possibly could. And I'm thrilled with the reception that it gets.
Yeah. And I think one thing that people do, by the way, you were talking about sets, the camaraderie of sets and the military. The food's probably better on set, I would have to imagine.
We were in New Orleans too, so it was extra good.
Extra good. All right, Greg, we're going to take a quick break here, and we'll be back in just a minute.
Today's episode is brought to you by The Clock on the Wall, because when I have time is never. Now, back to the show.
Don't worry, no one's listening.
All right, everybody, welcome back. You talked about, and I thought it was so frank the way you spoke about that people were ending their lives from bullying. Were you a reluctant advocate, or did you just feel this was something that was a long time coming?
I wasn't reluctant at all. I just didn't know how to help or how to contribute. I was quite concerned. Look, I'm not going to get beat up today.
Yeah.
Try, but good luck. I'm gonna get an airplane on Thursday, and I'm gonna have an amazing month in Canada with my boyfriend.
Yep.
I'm coming from a really secure place. Everything in my house is perfect, pretty much. It looks good. Outside, it's not so good. I have a responsibility, and whether it's to help, I mentor writers that are in the Writers Guild program for veterans, whether it's that, whether it's just staying authentic and encouraging other people to tell their stories, whatever that is, I have a responsibility to use my privileged place to get uncomfortable. I don't want to do anything that makes me uncomfortable,
Sure.
but I do want to do things that make other people more comfortable.
One time I was out riding a bike, Camp Mather in Yosemite is this camp for people who live in San Francisco. And it's you go out there and it's just completely dark and there's no lights at all at night, and you ride in the bike. And we were going to one of the camps, and one of my kids was like, "Why are you not afraid?" And I was like, "Well, I would be afraid if you weren't here." Right? I used to be afraid. But then I had kids and I realized I can't be afraid. And one of the things that I think about when I hear you talk about this story is how all of us, whether we're straight, gay, whatever was going on in our lives, those years, before you're 25, especially, things can seem huge, can seem really big. And now I think with time, they're just not as big. Yes, things have gotten better also, but I also think that things have gotten worse for some people.
There's opportunities that aren't available and that are closing. Yep. Doors are closing, and I'm sorry about that, which is really, again, just to encourage, as you do as well, you need to write your story. You need to tell your story, because sometimes it's the only power that you have. And no one can ever take that away from you. The Marines took me from Otherhood to Brotherhood. I never expected them to embrace me. I never expected to learn what I did from that experience. But we all, like you said, everybody has a story. Find your tribe, find your allies, find a writing group, do whatever that is. But for God's sake, tell the stories that you want to tell. Otherwise, the world isn't going to continue to evolve, and doors will continue to close and not open up. Open the damn door yourself.
Kick them open. I always tell people, you are what you do every day. And if you can write, you're a writer. If you write, a little bit, most days of the week, that's what you got to do. Find your story, tell your story.
Take it from me. Don't be discouraged by what you don't know.
Yeah.
Be encouraged by what you learn.
And I'm really looking forward to finishing the book. What I've gotten so far is that
You live.
Yeah, you do. It's really great. It's like, it's a bit of a cheat. I know the ending. Some people don't always have a great experience. Some people do, but you got formed like a diamond. Like it was pressure. Like that's what I got from you, is you thought you were walking to whatever, and you were hit in the face with what the truth is.
It was insane. It was insane every single day. But just as you know from writing, you have to put one foot in front of the other. And as crazy as it got in the Marines, no matter what it was, I could always put one foot in front of the others because they told me I could. I never had one person in my whole childhood encouraging me. I should have done what society wanted, disappeared, gone away, lived in a closet forever.
Yep.
But the Marines, that chance I took, they told me how to continually bust open the door. We don't run from danger. We run towards it.
That's really good advice. That really is. Greg, all right, let's just do a little bit here with Laugh, Cry, Scream. All right, so I always like to ask people, what book, movie, television show, or scene has made you laugh or cry and scream? So what have you got for laugh?
The book Confederacy of Dunces.
Oh, that's my favorite book.
Never not funny. I also embraced the personal story of the author committing suicide because he didn't think he was good enough to live. His mother found the book and forced this professor at Tulane University to read it, and it won the Pulitzer Prize, and it's a genius book, and I'm just so sorry that he is not still around, but his book is, and it's hilarious.
That book changed my life. I wrote my first novel based on the opening line is an homage to that, because it was what I thought the book was when I walked away from the bookstore. It was something completely different, amazing, whatever. But I went and wrote the book I thought it was going to be, and I never not laugh, no matter how many times I reread it. If you haven't read it, that's a great one. All right.
There's a reason they've never been able to dramatize that, and they just can't. They tried with Robin Williams. They tried with Chris Farley. Nobody's gotten it off the ground, and I can't think of anybody that could play that part. A movie that makes me laugh every time is Blazing Saddles. I'll never not laugh at Blazing Saddles. I think Mel Brooks is a genius, and what I also love about that is that he had hundreds of people on board saying yes to all of that because they knew it was funny. Madeline Kahn is a gift.
Oh, she's so good.
So that's that. And, Scream, I was going to say, my first instinct is to say that I scream when I see something not done well, a movie that dropped the ball, an edit problem. Where's the third act? Wait, where'd that character go? But then I correct myself. And I don't scream against it. I scream for it because it got made. Yeah, it may have flaws, but you know what? They're not sitting at home dreaming about it. They stepped outside and they sold that sucker, and they got somebody to say yes and somebody to make it. So I champion all work, good or bad.
Yeah, this is something that we talked about offline, which is so true. You want to write the best thing you can, but you also must write the thing. Like, if you can't ever give it to someone because it must be perfect, it's never going to be perfect.
Someone should have to pull the script out of your dead hands.
Exactly.
We write something and we're so excited about it. We're feeling good about it because we've had a good day. We had 10 minutes finally to write, and oh, that makes sense. And we instantly want to have somebody read it. I have learned not to show anybody anything for a very long time because you're never ready. Your script's not ready. Nothing's ready. So don't ask because you want the validation, because you're not going to learn anything from praise. I've
No.
never learned from praise. I
No.
learned from, hey, this is a really good script, but did you think about you're not ending Act 2 near their Dark Night of the Soul. You need to adjust that or whatever. And I thought, okay, thank you. That note I can use.
What I always ask is, I listen to the praise and then I say, I know it's good. I wouldn't have let it out of my hands if it wasn't good. Tell me what you see as a problem or speed bumps you see. Tell me, because I know it's good enough for me to even hand it to you.
And don't be afraid to state that in advance. When you ask somebody to read something, know what you want from that read. If you want to know, if you're having a problem with an act or conflict, or you're wondering if what you're trying to do is even clear, whatever that is, state that up front so the reader is informed with that as they're reading it.
Writers usually know where we're soft, where things might not be right, and what we're looking for is people to confirm our knowledge. Sometimes they'll come up with things that are absolutely great and outside the box, and we haven't thought of that. But if we've lived with it long enough, we've probably seen it from 10 different directions, and we know one of the things you're going to say about it. But we just need to have enough of those people say enough of those things so we know.
And at the end of the day, I'm eternally grateful for anybody that reads my book or a script or whatever, because you've given me your time, and time is irreplaceable. So
that is the best thing. Yeah.
Thank you for reading my story. Thank you for reading the book. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I can't wait. By the way, I didn't look at this. Did you do the audiobook, or did
I did? I had an audition too.
That's great. I've done that for one book of mine. I've had Will Wheaton and Ray Porter do other books of mine. It's hard, isn't it?
It is really hard. The whole process is hard. Writing the book is hard. Writing a script is hard. Writing it's all hard. Going to record that, I didn't have a director. I just had an engineer, and it was great because when I'm in the booth, he was my audience. So he was laughing or responding to things as he's pushing buttons, and that helped me. So I really appreciated that. And I had just texted him last night to let him know that the book that he had helped produce was now going to be a show, and he was very sweet, remembering certain things about our time together.
Greg, I really appreciate you coming on board and talking with me about all of this. Tell everybody how they can reach you, and now the book's available and you can listen and read, but about the Netflix.
It'll be on sometime. I don't know when, 2025.
Hey, it's me breaking in. When Greg and I recorded this, we didn't know when it was going to air or what the title was. Boots premiered on Netflix October 9th.
But in the meantime, the book is up. I have a website, pinkmarine.com, that boyfriend I've talked about 1,000 times designed and maintains. He did a great job. I have social media. I don't use it a bunch just because I'm trying to work. But
yes, agreed.
Eat, Greg, eat. But I love hearing from people. You're telling me that you're reading the story means the world to me. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Greg. Great to be with you today.
I'm glad that no one was listening.
I'm really glad, because otherwise we couldn't have said half the things we said.
It's better when no one listens.
It really is.
Don't worry, no one's listening.
DWNOL is produced by Lisa Lindo for Rocket Surgeon Productions and presented by Bookster. DWNOL themes by Trina Davis and Annie Musical Team. More later. Oh, hey, I forgot. One last thing. Everyone's heard Thomas Edison's quote, "Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration." What's not as well known, it's the reason writers often don't smell very good. So write every day, but you're probably not going to do that, so shower more often than you write, and use semicolons as often as you chew on tinfoil.